And if it's okay with Council President, I'll click Start Webinar.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you. All set?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome everyone to a City Council work session for Monday, April 5th, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Okay.
Present.
Councilwoman Riley. Oh, she's logging in. Councilwoman Riley, are you present?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Councilwoman Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
Councilman Strawn,
Present.
Councilman Scanlon,
Present.
and President Restanetti.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Great. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start with a discussion regarding the Youth Recreation Center. We do have Paul Palmer and Pat McGinnis, but we also have our mayor. And why don't we just start the discussion with that?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Hello, President Restanetti, members of City Council. Happy Easter to everyone. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Sophie, okay, all right,
Yes.
wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful. So really, I'm going to turn this, right over to Paul and Pat, but I just wanted to, say that the concept of a youth and community center is something that's been discussed in our community for a very long period of time. It is something that I have referenced and highlighted in several of my State of the City speeches in recent years. It's something that was included in the Police Reform Collaborative that you voted on this past or last week. And it's something that members of the community have submitted, letters or called in public comment, or have, directly made requests of the city to make additional investments in youth programming and youth facilities. And I think in Binghamton, Paul and Pat and the men and women of the Parks and Recreation Department really have done an outstanding job with very limited resources. And that's really what this is about. It's about the facilities and the resources we have and what it's going to take for us to go to the next level and provide the types of services that the residents and families of this community have been requesting, asking for, demanding for a very long period of time. So I think that this is very exciting for the city. It's something obviously that I fully support and have been promoting and trying to get us to this point. So I'll turn it over to Paul Palmer and Pat McGinnis, and then afterward we have Dave Chase from Clark Patterson Lee, fresh off the design of the 7 Holly Street project. Parking garage did a great job for the city. So we're certainly looking forward to working with you and your team. And I'm looking forward to seeing you share the presentation that you shared with us. That was one of the many reasons that we're so very excited about this project. But Paul, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, President Restanetti.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome. Thank you.
So to start off, we can't tell you how important it is for the city of Binghamton and the Parks Department to have our own facility. The frustration that the Parks has gone through for literally years, trying to coordinate and run programs through buildings within the school district. It's not always been a pleasant experience and really has limited what we can do. probably the biggest thing is if we had our own facility, we could run the programs on our calendar. Presently, what we do is we are at beck and call of the school district, many times being canceled at the last minute, actually having people show up for an adult program and find out that the gym isn't available, those kinds of things. And to run better programs, more diverse programs with all age groups, and not only just a recreation portion of it, but the ability to have classes in coordination with other organizations to allow us to help the community. I think with that, that's where we're coming from, and Pat has done a great job with this PowerPoint that you have in paper and hard copy. And I think that at this point, I would let Pat run through his PowerPoint.
Yeah, everyone should have got it last Thursday. But a couple things I want to point out. I say rec center in the PowerPoint. To me, they're rec center, community center is an interchangeable term. So don't get hung up on that. But like Paul said, and as those of you who have met with us, the biggest challenge we've been facing, for years and years and years is the lack of our own space. Paul hinted on why, but so having a facility to call our own would be really important and big to us. Core activities, the core pillars of what we want to do with a space like this, and kind of to build off of would be an expansion of our youth and adult sports, creating educational opportunities, especially for teenagers, and not just your regular school opportunities. Another big thing we'd like to push would be, we call them life skills courses, but the wood shops, basic home ownership skills like that. Chance to push exercise classes, chance to push new recreational programs. And then a big thing would be a chance for the community, city of Binghamton to have their own space where things are on their own terms. But I guess the biggest thing with youth and adult sports, it would really allow us to run programs on our own terms. We'd be able to start baseball and softball when we need to inside, even though we're in the Northeast. We got to start early because it ends early with the leagues. It gives us a chance to do some things we haven't been able to do in the past. We've never really been able to run our own youth basketball program per se, due to the fact, and everything we said about the school district is not a knock on them. They also don't have the space, so we're working to kind of create this space that needs to be there. Educational opportunities, it's a huge chance to work with different area people around here. Broome Community College is right in the neighborhood. The Historical Society is right in the neighborhood. We can work with trying to add STEM type classes, after school programs, GED stuff. Night Owls is a program that BCC has run using our senior center in the past. And then something I think we are really excited about would be what we call the life skills classes. Should be a chance to team up with Vines, who's going to be building their headquarters right around the corner. Chance to team up with the BCC Culinary Arts to use a commercial kitchen that might be in the building. How many people here don't know how to do the basics of woodworking, run a drill, turn a saw on, something like that, where we have tools and stuff that have been donated to have an ability to teach people how to do that. Things like that, where, we can, hopefully you can take a class and come out with a usable skill at the end of it. Exercise classes, they are, a huge trend right now. And it's the ability to, run them on our own terms and make them available to people that maybe wouldn't regularly be able to pay for a class like that or afford something like that. That we can get them that instructor and a chance to do it. And, rec programs, that's our bread and butter. I have right here, we've worked with a list of 500 possible, rec programs that we could try and implement and see what sticks, see what works, things like that. And, some logistical things, which is not always the fun part of something like this, but right now we store our rec equipment at 6 different locations throughout the city. So we don't have one main hub for it. Some of it's upstairs, so we're hauling things up and down. Some of it's across town, some of it's here, some of it's there. This would give us a place to centrally locate all of that stuff. It would be better organized. It would give a place for City Hall is an intimidating and hard place to get to. There's no parking, security, all that. It would give people a chance to come meet with us about programs on an easier, more convenient, accessible place. It would allow our staff to be located in one location and not spread out all over trying to run programming and stuff. So that's kind of the logistical side of things. It gives us a home base for our operation, which we just don't currently have. And like I said, the end of this is just an idea. It's a base, it's a starting point. Nothing here is set in stone. It's to give us a direction and come up with an idea to make this a great place for the city of Binghamton.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
President?
Go ahead, Councilman Burns, and then I think it's Tom Scanlon.
Yeah. Did you come up with a budget, what it would cost to run it every year, what an additional cost to the Parks Department?
So that is going to depend on what the final product looks like. So, if it's one gym and one community room, that's going to look different than a 2-court gym with a great room and an exercise center. So we can kind of firm that up a little bit once we work with CPL to kind of come up with what the center itself would look like.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And this might be a question for the mayor. Mayor, are you still there?
Yes, I am, Councilman Burns.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, Columbus Park, how was Columbus Park decided on? And, do we know that there's more students in that area, for instance, especially teenagers, let's say, or parents, that people that don't have transportation to it, was Sherry Lindsay Park thought of, for instance, as, closer to the east side and the north side and the apartments across the street from Sherry Lindsay. Was that considered at all, Sherry Lindsay?
Sure. So Councilman Burns, with regards to your first question on the budget, that is something with regards to operations that Paul and Pat and I have been talking about. They've actually come up with a couple different scenarios, and obviously depends on the size, scope, programs, and staffings. My approach to that would be that we should be utilizing additional Cdbg funding to fund, which is an eligible use, which is an eligible use, meaning a permitted use of the additional part-time, whether it's rec attendants, rec supervisors, laborers, et cetera. So, it's something, since this is brand new, I'm sure it's going to be a little bit of a moving target, but I think that you're going to be in the ballpark of at least a couple $100,000 annually. And it could go up from there. So I think it's safe to use $200,000 to $250,000 as a baseline for annual operations. Could increase from there. There are obviously some positions that already exist that would simply move over there. So you're not completely starting 100% from scratch. And that would be how, we would pursue from a budgeting standpoint, the operational part. With regards to Sherry Lindsay Park, yes, that is something that we had conversations about. Columbus Park is obviously one of the most poorest census tracts in the city. All of our parks really are from a transportation standpoint, on bus routes or accessible by bus. With regards to the actual size of Sherry Lindsay Park, we don't really have the space to construct a facility of this unless we are cutting into things that are already there. And I suppose the same could be true about Columbus Park because we have a rather large baseball field that's and some other poorly utilized space as well. But because we did have these conversations, Pat and Paul, and when I've heard from residents, it had really been more about downtown, about the spray pad that's there, the basketball courts, and obviously Sherry Lindsay, you have a pool and basketball courts and a skate park, as well. But due to the amount of space that we would need, I mean, we even at one point talked to the owners of Binghamton Plaza, because Binghamton Plaza, as you know, is adjacent to Sherry Lindsay Park, to see if we could maybe acquire some space there for potential expansion. The fact that it's along the river certainly does make it, attractive as well. One of the things that, I thought was important is that this facility either be adjacent to or part of an existing park. And I suppose in close proximity, could be as well, but the park and the facility should complement each other. So that it's not just a youth facility that doesn't have access to outdoor recreation space. Outdoor recreation space, I think, is a vital part, of the youth center. So from a logistical standpoint, from anecdotal input that I've heard, it just seemed to make more sense for us to utilize it at Columbus Park. Transportation, I mean, that's an issue, no matter where you go. That's an issue for the Urban League, the Boys and Girls Club, et cetera. So we really did take a look at both Sherry Lindsay Park and Columbus Park. It's just, you would really be taking away more from Sherry Lindsay Park than I think you would be Columbus Park.
Transportation wise, what do you think of the idea of a shuttle, that would go around town like the university does for their students?
So that's come up before. The issue has always been the cost of that. Mm-hmm. And, if there are opportunities to partner with, BC Transit, which has, not always been an easy thing to try to see if that's, an option. But I guess, the question would be, we know that Columbus Park is the destination. What's the origination point of a shuttle, right? I mean, so where are we picking people up from? Are we, designating, certain points in different neighborhoods across the city? Mm-hmm. But it always has come down to cost. And I'll just say that, this is not exactly what you're asking, but, we had this conversation with the school district, at one point as well, because, and this was a while ago, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but there's a radius with which if you live too close to a school, you're not able to access the bus and you have to walk, right? And so we had conversations about, how much would it cost to provide transportation for those children that were in close proximity because, in the winter time, et cetera. And it was in the millions on an annual basis. So, and I was frankly shocked to hear that. And I don't know the exact number, but I know it was more than $1 million.
Wow.
And so, I would be all for a shuttle, but I would not know how that we would pay for that at this point in time.
And what about, was there any thought about partnering with the Girls and Boys Club and expanding their programs, with our Parks Department?
Sure. So I'll actually let Paul and Pat answer that. I know that has come up before, and so the one point that I'll add on to that is that's because we have had those same questions as well. Was there underutilized? For example, like when the Urban League was right across the street. Could we have just taken over that facility? It was right across the street from a park. They're more set up as kind of an office building than large recreational space. But there's the community center standpoint of as well, where you want community rooms and classrooms, et cetera. So the Boys and Girls Club have their own types of programs there, and from the community space standpoint, now we're in a similar situation to what we were with the school district, where the school district's programs and priorities are priority number one, and we get to fill in around the space or in the time, whether it's conducive or not. The same is true at the Boys and Girls Club, where they have their own programs that are in operation there, and the Boys and Girls Club will tell you that they're not an underutilized facility. I think they would like the city of Binghamton, and this because you guys approve funding on an annual basis for certain types of programs, whether it's increased memberships, whether it's increasing the hours in the summertime. What we'd like them to be open later. It's not an issue of we need to help them identify new programs because they have, hours of downtime, et cetera. But Paul and Pat, I mean, with regards to, because we've had that conversation before, and maybe you could, shed some light on whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, whether it's, empty churches, whether it's, the Urban League, et cetera.
I think the point for the Parks Department is that our summer programs, the summer fun and the safety towns and those programs are really well received in the community. And really our numbers are always up, except last year being the exception. But we have enough, we take enough kids under our programs to warrant us to be on our own. They're very successful right now. Currently, things are up on, and we go through a program called Rec Desk, and we're filling up as we speak. The same goes for the softball and baseball programs, the Little League, and our numbers are always high, and I think we stand alone in that respect.
And another thing to touch on is this gives us a chance to focus some programming towards adults. That's kind of where we don't really touch base right now. And this is a chance for us to serve those residents of Binghamton that currently don't get recreational programming because they're adults. We don't really have the facility to do that right now.
Paul, one of the things that you mentioned to me that I think if you could just reiterate it, it hasn't come up yet. When I asked about, if we didn't do this, what could we do to improve, operations or expand in new programs? You had a great phrase that, all we can do right now is maintain the status quo. We don't have more facilities or like in order for us to go to the next level, this is what we need to do. We don't have additional space or programs or capacities. And hearing that from you, that was impactful to me. And maybe you could just elaborate on that to Councilman Burns.
Well, and again, like Pat said, but everything that we do is on somebody else's time frame. This allows us to program the way we would like to program. And like Pat mentioned, it's not always youth, it's adults. And that really, it's hard to, unless you are in the office here and realize the frustration that goes on when we can't do the things that we want to do because we don't have the space. It's incredible that, I was in the maintenance part of this whole department for virtually my whole career, and then the last 2 years here, and it took in the office, and it only took a couple of months for me to realize the frustration and how badly we really could use a structure of our own.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Mr. Scanlon, Councilman Scanlon, you had a question. Are you still
I
there?
do, yes.
Go ahead.
This is for Pat and Paul. How do you envision staffing this center?
Well, as the mayor alluded to a little bit, we already have, a few of us, 2 or 3 that potentially would be in the building to begin with. So we wouldn't be starting from scratch. And again, it all depends on the type of facility that we would end up with. Well, like Pat mentioned, 1 court versus 2 courts, but really the number of rooms that we have or end up with would dictate more how many people. But again, the size has a lot to do with that.
Paul, how about some of the job titles of the types of positions, I think is what Councilman Scanlon is asking. What type of people are we hiring that would be in that facility?
Oh, okay. So Pat's more familiar with
The rec type.
the rec portion of it.
So basically the way we are staffed with rec positions, there are rec supervisors that's a full-time position who supervises recreation leaders who are also full-time positions. So, the supervisor's 1 step up from entry level. The full-time rec leaders would be, an entry level full-time position. And then underneath that, we carry a variety of, this is across all part-time and seasonal recreation attendants who report back to those rec leaders. So that's kind of how, as a recreation department, we are structured currently. And I would envision that we would have a rec supervisor there. That's sort of how we have it at the senior center. That's how our youth programs work. And then we would have some leaders underneath that.
Does anyone else have anything? Councilwoman Riley, go ahead.
Thank you, President Rezanetti. Hi, Paul and Pat.
Hello.
Good to hear from you guys again. Again, I thank you for your commitment to the programming for our youth, particularly the young folks. I really like the fact that most of our programs are not bound by one's financial ability to be able to participate. My concern, though, is if we have this building, we will continue in that same process. So this is not a revenue generating project, correct?
Correct.
The goal is not to make it revenue generating. So we will not ultimately look at it as a source for income.
Correct.
In our minds, yes. At the end of the day, that's something that council sets the prices of any of our programming, which we don't currently charge for.
Perfect. My second question, and I'm not sure if this goes to Mayor David or Corp Counsel, was there an RFQ for this project posted, and when was it posted?
Councilwoman Riley, to your first question, I just wanted to say I agree with you too, that these should not be revenue generating programs. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but yes, there was an RFQ that we had over a dozen. I think for some reason, I think it's 18, but I could be off by one or two. Of which Dave Chase's firm, CPL, and Whittam were one of. We did do an RFQ, and we received the proposals, and we conducted, we did interviews where we whittled it down to, we whittled it down to 6, and of those 6, we evaluated 6 different proposals and whittled it down to 3, and then we conducted Zoom interviews for all 3 of those proposals. And
Oh, okay. No, I heard her ask.
Okay, yeah, so, and then Dave Chase's presentation, which I believe he's going to show you shortly, is among what he showed us. So Ken or someone else can fill in the exact
well,
date.
hold on one second. Excuse me. So who is the we you're talking about? Not the Parks and Rec department. Who is the we that was part of the RFQ process review?
Sure. So when we issue an RFQ, it is issued by the Board of Contract and Supply. So we issue an advertisement.
Right. No. I know about the general for this one.
I'm just trying to answer your question with as much detail as I can. So you'd like to know who actually did the interviews of these firms. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So myself, Ray Standish was on, Franco from your office was on, Paul Palmer was on, Paul was both of you, right? Paul and Pat?
Yep.
Paul and Pat was on. I was on, Jared was on, Megan was on. So what is that? That's 6, 7 people that were on, and we had scoring sheets, which are a common consistent sheet that we fill out for whatever the type of project is. And then when it gets whittled down to the 3 firms, we the group of who I just outlined, conducted a Zoom meeting, and we collectively all had an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay. So what happens to the firm? I know in the proposal here, the firm that started the preliminary redesign work of the park will be enveloped into the planning process. But did they finish their portion of what was expected of them?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to touch on that. So the answer to that is they started it, but they did not finish it. And so just as a reminder for the group, couple of years, last year, I think the timeline goes by very quick. The city made an announcement that we, the city of Binghamton, were going to invest $500,000 into just the Columbus Park investments and improvements. So you'll recall that process started. There were several public meetings to get that were hosted by Whittam to get public input from the community. But then in the middle of that process, we also made an announcement that we wanted to also put a youth and community center at Columbus Park as well. Well, Whittam was not able to move forward because they didn't know, they couldn't create a plan and design for the park when they didn't know where the physical facility was going to go. And they're right about that. So we said, okay, we will now figure out exactly where we're going to locate the facility and go through that process. And then we'll be able to revisit this and move both of the projects forward simultaneously. And each of the firms will work with each other on the design. And then when we went through this RFQ process, CPL and Dave Chase's group, I think very astutely, if I can say on their part, decided to team up with Whittam So now they're doing both of these simultaneously. So both of these firms are able to complement one another. And the funding that we're using, we identified $500,000 in fiscal year 46 CDBG money. One of the items that's you're going to be talking to a CDAC representations. The budget that I don't think has made its way down to City Council yet, but one of the items that we're recommending, we, the administration and myself, for fiscal year 47 is to put $600,000 into that budget for the Columbus Park improvements and this new project as well. So a total of 1.1 million over 2 fiscal years of CDBG funds. So WIDM had started the process, had gotten a lot of public input. We stopped until we answered the question that we're going through right now on how big is this facility going to be and where it's going to be located. And both aspects will move forward at one time and hopefully will be completed by the end of next year, both aspects of it.
Okay. Thank you for that information. So I did want to make sure we did not cause any type of breach in our contract with the other organization, since we had initiated work with them.
I would say that that actually was one of the reasons that I thought Dave Chase's proposal was a great proposal for the city, because it addresses both of those, and both of those firms are working together. That's one of the things that put them over the top, in my opinion.
So now, again, since we're asking questions as generally, I know we are supposed to have a presentation soon, but we already have a major project on the books, our fire department, which is part of an essential plan. Mm-hmm. Why do we have to build, per this proposal, a $5 million infrastructure at this time?
What exactly is the question? Is the question about that it's 5 million, or why are we building a youth center at this time? Or
well, you can answer both.
Okay, well, 5 million is just an estimate. I would like to see that number less, and I've communicated that to Dave Chase, and it's all about timing and the cost of materials, especially over the course of the next 12 months. But I think that Paul, if you're asking about why do we need a youth and community center, I think that's what we've been talking about.
He already kind of outlined that piece, but right now I'm asking about specifically the timing with the cost. So it's separate, but it's all one major concern.
I guess I would ask you, why would we not do it now if there's been a years and decades long demand for it, right? I mean,
because we're post-pandemic. We don't know what our future will hold in terms of the number of evictions. We have a whole host of things we have to kind of prioritize. And I just want to make sure we're being fiscally responsible.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that very much. With regards to the evictions, I mean, we have several rounds of CDBG federal CARES money still that has hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of money for whether it's renters or homeowners, et cetera. Part of the $48 million stimulus funds, nonprofits, businesses, individuals, families who have been impacted by the pandemic, are eligible for that funding as well. I brought this specific point up before about the interest rates. From a business and investment and construction standpoint, now is the best time to be doing infrastructure projects. The interest rates are only going to go up if you're going to borrow money for projects. So this has been something that has been needed for a very long period of time. You mentioned the fire station. The fire station we're hoping is going to be bid out next month. The designs are near completed right now. If not now, when? This has been something that I've heard about certainly, since I was first elected mayor in 2014. Is we need more youth programs. We need more facilities. We need to do more for the youth of our communities. So From a financial standpoint, I think that we've demonstrated over the course of the last 7 years, our budgets are very tight, they're very conservative. We're able to make major investments while continuing to provide tax relief for residents. But if you're worried about, like many people are, about how this pandemic is impacting, children and families, we have a number of financial resources available to cover all the things that you're talking about, all in federal, either Cdbg or stimulus money.
And we'll be looking forward to that conversation as well.
Great, wonderful, thank you.
That concludes my questions at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Paul and Pat and Mayor David. Thanks for being here. So I want to start out by saying that conceptually, I am 100% on board. I love the idea of having a centralized space for the Parks and Rec Department to store equipment, to have a centralized location where we can just say, oh, go to the center, and I understand it'll allow you to expand a lot of programs, some of which reading about, I was very excited myself to maybe participate in those. I want to make sure that we're doing this in the right way, in a sustainable way. So I just want to contextualize my questions from that standpoint, where I want this to work, but I have some concerns. The first thing that I thought was a little bit concerning was the timeline of this. It seems to be rushed in a way that I worry is going to be unsustainable, particularly the community input phase. I think I read that there was going to be one meeting or like a couple of meetings, which that worries me. So I guess my first question is, and I know that you said that part of this has been comes from the meetings that Witham had when designing their park improvements, but going forward, how are we going to ensure that this is really a community-driven process and that the community's voices are heard so that they are able to express what they need and want to see from this project?
Sure, I think that's a great question, and I will answer any question you have in any format you want. It might be a good opportunity to let Dave do the presentation, because what you're talking about right now, the timeline and the process, is exactly one of the things that he's going to talk about. But maybe I could just say that, I wholeheartedly agree with you on the importance of public input and transparency, with regards to this project. And I think that this is a facility that should be, it's for community use, and the community should have a dominant voice in, how it's being designed, how it's being used, et cetera. I know for the Columbus Park, just the improvement project itself, there were 2 public hearings. There should be multiple. I would have to think that it's more than one, because I know that we talked about at least one to collect input and then one to present renderings and get input on it as well. So I do believe that it's more than one. But if it's all right with you, maybe we could, and I'll continue to be on, as well, if we could have Dave do the presentation, because the timeline is one of the things that he's going to be talking about, if that's acceptable to you.
Okay, well, I think there's one question that I would like to ask just before the presentation, because I believe that you might be better able to answer this.
Okay.
Where is this proposed $6 million going to be coming from?
And where are we getting the 6? You said 6 million.
So I'm adding you said the $1.1 million that's coming from
CDBG
Well, I guess
fund.
that's from CDBG. Okay, so
Right.
I was adding that. Okay,
Okay.
so that doesn't count. So the $5 million.
Okay, so I guess I would look at it as if we're looking at 5 million and Dave's gonna do the best he can to get it below that we've already got 1.1 million of the 5 million. And I would, and this is something that, you know, there should be council input on, but I think that we would approach this like we have approached other capital projects in the city, whether it was 7 Hawley Street, whether it's been the baseball stadium, and that's where we use a portion of our fund balance and we do a portion of borrowing, or in this case, we would also be using a portion of CDBG, you know, money as well. You know, some of you may feel strongly that we should just use, you know, stimulus money, or may feel strongly that we shouldn't use any stimulus money and that we should, you know, borrow. But when we do any type of capital project, you know, our source of funds are typically the same, right? I mean, we borrowed money for our fire station. When it came to 7 Hawley Street, we got a grant from the state of New York for 2.1 million. We bonded money and we used a portion of our fund balance. When we did the stadium, we used a portion of our fund balance and we got millions of dollars from the state of New York. And the owner of the stadium, or the owner of the team, contributed money as well. So I would think our approach would be similar, where we've got $1.1 million in federal money. We can utilize a portion of our fund balance or our stimulus money, and a combination of bonding. That would be my general approach to it. And obviously we'll pursue other, you know, funding sources as well, but that's what we have done in the past on all capital projects. And that's what I think we would do in this case, because this is still a capital project.
Okay, so just to clarify, you said that, you know, to make sure I'm understanding correctly, the $1.1 million from CDBG would detract from that $5 million construction budget, or proposed?
Okay, so you know, just so we're clear here, what tonight is about is the soft costs, right? Not the construction costs, but the soft costs. So if we're estimating that, you know, the construction of the building is $4.5 million, and you know the soft costs are $548,000, that would give you $5 million. If the construction is $5 million, then you know the soft costs of 500,000 would make the whole project 5.5 million. We actually don't know until it's bid out. You know, obviously these are just estimates, and we've, you know, this is typical of, you know, any of the capital projects. We go on square footage and what the estimate is for, you know, cost per square foot for commercial construction. That's something that came up during the presentation as well. But I think that $4.5 to $5 million is probably a pretty accurate, you know, construction ballpark for what we're talking about right here.
Okay, I mean, I'm just taking the upper limits of the numbers given, not because I'm thinking or hoping that it will cost, but that's, you know, in the case that it does cost the full $5 million for construction and the full $1.1 million for the design.
No,
and again, I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes, that part you're not, because the $1.1 million is not for design. So what we're talking about right now is $548,000. That's the architect and design costs right there. The $600,000 that I'm talking about that you haven't seen yet, that's going to come to you of CDBG money, that would be part of the capital construction cost. So what you're voting on tonight, that is the soft cost. So it's not 1.1 on top of 5.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. So my last question, I think for now, again, before, and you know, I'm looking forward to this presentation. I'm wondering if part of the design, there was a consideration of rehabbing an old building, or taking a building that, you know, a large building that already exists, rather than constructing a new building.
Absolutely. My ideal, I spent at least a year and a half talking to the folks at St. Mary's Recreation Center, which is adjacent to Columbus Park. I think that building, that location, the size right now would be ideal. I started talking to them before the pandemic, and then things got slowed down during the pandemic. I'll just, fast forward and bottom line this for you. We expressed an interest in purchasing or leasing, and at the end of the day, they didn't want to do either. They wanted to retain their control of it and want to go down their own path of trying to maybe hire a facility manager or something like that to generate their own business. But I went and made presentations to the trustees, talked at length to the priest for that exact reason. And it was already literally adjacent to the park. So absolutely, I think our approach is very similar. We spent a lot of time doing that. In fact, Paul and Pat, we walked through at least a couple times. St. Mary's, we just thought it was, ideal from location and size, but at the end of the day, they, basically said, no, we're going to go in this different direction. They were pleased that we did this because it reignited a fire internally amongst decision makers that, yes, our facility is underutilized and we internally need to do a better job of trying to utilize it for events. But this was this started prior to the pandemic. So then they said, well, we'll have to wait till after the pandemic. And so I had conversations over the course of the last year. They've been kind of polling the parishioners now as well, because they're running at a loss as well. But at the end of the day, they decided no. It was unfortunate and disappointing, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for answering my questions, and
Sure.
I look forward to this presentation.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman Friedman.
Okay, thank you. Should we turn
I
it
have one more
over?
question.
Oh, go ahead, Councilwoman Riley, go
Yes,
ahead.
just to piggyback on Councilwoman Friedman, does it have to be there? We have properties, commercial properties that are vacant, that would be prime locations for other districts in this city. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the park, or is that part of the vision that it must be in this park?
Who is we when you say the properties?
You said what now?
Well, you said we, and I'm just wondering, who is we?
The city of Binghamton has commercial real estate. Well, we don't own it. There are commercial buildings and locations in the city that are either for sale or vacant, or for rent, or something we could negotiate with, similar to St. Mary's. Are we meaning the city now, we must put the building at Columbus Park?
So at this point, we are not pursuing any other buildings. My belief is that it should either be, at a park, connected to a park, or in very close proximity to a park. Just having a commercial building that were rehabbed that is not accessible to a park is not something I believe maximizes or accomplishes what our overall goal is. So obviously, the north side and downtown with regards to, poverty and the census tracts, those were the two parks that we looked at. And I think we reviewed why we ended up at Columbus Park.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's another comment, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Chase. Thank you for your patience. We're glad you're here.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you all, and excited to share with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, okay, it's telling me if the host disabled participant screen sharing. Is that, I'm not sure who has control of that.
Yeah, I could try and adjust that for you, okay?
Yeah, it's still telling me that it's disabled.
So I'm looking here. I'm not sure. Where that would let me do that.
Lee, is it
know-
possible to make him a co-host? I think that may allow him to do that.
Yeah, that may be the only option.
Okay, I'm the host. All right.
Okay.
Very good. There we go. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, one moment here. Okay. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to come and just share our presentation. This is the presentation that we gave during our interview back at the beginning of last month when we were, after we'd been shortlisted for the project and interviewed for it. There may be some of the slides I won't necessarily touch on, but I will try and give you an overview of what we're looking to do here. First of all, we're excited to work with the city on this project. As the mayor mentioned, I've been working personally, and we as a firm, CPL, has been working very closely with the city on the 7 Holly Street parking garage project, which I think has been a great success. And I've really loved the relationships we've built with the administration through that project, and feel like just the working relationship that we established will really help to make this project go very, very smoothly. So we're very excited about that. So just to get started, I wanted to just point out, obviously that's me on the upper left there. Our team for this project has, we've got a lot of people who are going to be involved in this. This is just a few of the faces, and the ones more likely that will be the ones primarily involved, with myself essentially leading the charge for CPL overall on the project. I've also got a couple of other individuals from my firm here who are part of our interview team. Rachel Nilsson, who's currently working on 3 other community center projects right now. Jason Streb, who's another one of our ACE designers, and then a couple of folks from Whittam Planning and Design. And then this is Corey Layton from L2 Architecture, which is another local architecture firm that we'll be collaborating with in the process. As the mayor mentioned, and I'll talk about this a little bit further, so Whittam Planning and Design is working on a number of projects for the city currently, but most critically, the Columbus Park Improvements Project, which when we were taking a look at this project, we thought it only made sense to put them or to invite them to be part of our team, with them really taking the lead on the site design in order to really weave the 2 projects together. Because it wouldn't have made sense for them to have continued on with their design, and then for us to have had, done, even though we have landscape architects and civil engineers, which I'm one of those, on our team, it wouldn't have made sense to essentially have 2 competing site designs going on at the same time. So we figured it would make most sense to just merge, kind of merge them in with us, so that we could have one really synchronized design for the project, which would bring a lot of efficiencies and synergies to the project as a whole. Pat and Paul have already really touched, and the mayor touched on the purpose and need of the project. Obviously, this is something that the city's been looking at for some time, to provide recreational and educational opportunities right here in one of the poorer neighborhoods in the city, and really ultimate goal being kind of improve community health, transform the surrounding neighborhood, improve the outcomes of a lot of generations of young people, for a long time to come. And so as far as why we going into this, I realize this may sound a little sales pitchy. These slides were put together for our interview, but just kind of some things, why we felt coming into this, the team that we had put together was kind of the best option for the city. In tackling this project is first of all, our local presence here. CPL, if you're not familiar with us, We've had our office here in Binghamton as CPL for 20 plus years, and prior to that, it was a small local firm that was called R.J. Martin Associates, prior to being acquired by CPL, that was here since the 1960s. Experience-wise, we are a full-service firm. CPL, as a firm, we have roughly 450 people running the full gamut of architectural and engineering disciplines. So we've got basically anything that a community needs to build, we can design. And, as seen from, like, for instance, the 7 Hawley Street project, we were drawing on resources from Rochester, Pittsburgh, Atlanta. We have offices all up and down the East Coast that we were able to draw from. So we do the same here. Basically, our idea or our approach is, okay, we'll pull the best talent from across our firm. And one of the things living in COVID world has brought to us is an even greater integration of our offices, and with kind of the transformation that's brought, even as we're seeing right here with this meeting, of being able to communicate virtually, it allows us to draw even more fully on our best talent for the entire across the board. As well, our community engagement strategy, as the mayor had mentioned, as you're all aware. So Whittam had done several community engagement sessions as part of the Columbus Park Improvements Project, where they gained a lot of valuable information. We will continue that with, as Councilman Friedman, as you mentioned, there was, I think, a couple of sessions that we had included in here for community input. If we've built in the capacity, if there are some additional focus group meetings that we need to have, we can certainly do that. And so we're with them from their end, and us as well on our other community center projects are well versed in doing virtual outreach. And so definitely something that's hugely important to this, because we want to hear the voice of the community, in addition to hearing the voices of the people who are going to be running this facility in the Parks Department and throughout the administration and the council. So the more input, the better, and the earlier the input, the better. As well, just looking at cost control, our goal is always to do more with less, and we'll be looking at costs from the very beginning, as the mayor talked about, looking at square foot costs, looking at, as we program the facility, making sure that there aren't any surprises when bid day comes, and that everybody's aware of, where things are headed. And then as well, just our vision and design. We pride ourselves on creative solutions and a creative approach that is, we hope will be fun for everybody involved, and allow everybody to have the opportunity to provide their input. So next, our experience, CPL, as I mentioned, we design pretty much anything a community would want to build, but specifically relative to community centers. These are all pictures of community centers that we have either designed and have been constructed, such as this Hayes Taylor one. Several of these are in North Carolina, several of these are in New York. We completed the West Seneca Community Center and Library out in the Buffalo area. Allegheny County YMCA, we were involved in the early stages of design for that. A couple of these other ones, this Kernersville Recreation Center, I believe, is about ready to go out to bid. Several of these are ones that Rachel Nilsson, the person that I mentioned, within our firm, that she's actively like the project manager on currently. So she's going to be working very closely with us, throughout this whole process, as we would design this. Okay, and then just speaking briefly to Whittam, as a sub-consultant on our team, really they have a lot of experience with designing public spaces. You can see here, this is part of their design for, some of the Art Deco district as well. They've got some other work, I believe, that they're working on this with the city. But basically, they really have a lot of expertise in looking at parks, public spaces, and designing those that a way is going to be something that'll be, be great for the community. As far as community engagement goes, this is just kind of a quick list of some of the people that we could anticipate being involved. Obviously, we'll work very closely with the administration, with Parks and Rec throughout the process, as well, with you as the elected officials of the city. And then as well, this is just kind of a sample list. Some of these, the organizations listed here, the Change Coalition, Vines, Friends of the Library, were organizations that Woodham had specific focus group meetings with as they were programming for Columbus Park as a whole. We could see outreach to them as well, and involvement, to whatever degree, the city deems appropriate. And really the keys to community engagement are, communication, consulting early and often, and building relationships with the community. We really want to hear everyone's input so that, and getting that input up front is really, the secret to success in one of these projects. These are just some examples of, some of the things that we have done as a firm in some prior community engagement sessions. Like this was Rachel here. One of these outreach events, it was like a father-daughter ball actually, and they had like a wishing tree there where people could put their desires for the project or things they were looking for, and so there's just different things we can do to, creatively to do outreach. In this era of COVID, it makes things a little interesting, but definitely, communicating virtually it creates some challenges, but it's something, I think that we are well versed in. We've done on multiple projects recently. So one of the things that we've found actually is that doing sessions virtually where people have the opportunity to actually maybe put questions in anonymously in like the chat box or whatever, where, during a live presentation versus sitting in person, they might be less inclined to raise their hand to ask a question. So it's provided, it does provide, even though it's different, in some ways it actually does even provide maybe some improvements or some increased response. And then as well, there's, the opportunity for public surveys, things like that. This graphic on the left here was something actually that Woodham did as part of Columbus Park. I know they were very happy with the level of response, and community input that they received, with doing those online surveys. And then as far as financial modeling, basically the basic gist of this slide is basically to say, we want to look at, and particularly, just basically, we're going to be looking at financial modeling at the project onset. We want to look at the cost for the project, make sure that we're tracking the cost of the project throughout, so again, that there are no surprises, at the end. I indicated on here just project delivery method, standard design, bid, build. Basically, we'll design it, then put it out to bid, and then there will be, multiple construction contractors that will be involved in actually constructing the project. From a scheduling standpoint, this is a schedule that we had laid out. Yes, it is a aggressive but doable schedule. What we are looking at is basically as soon as we receive the green light, with a signed contract, I have everybody teed up, ready to start immediately on the project. First things we would be doing is getting the site surveyed. We have a local surveyor lined up to do that. Immediately start on the community engagement at the same time as we're working on the schematic design. Meeting with the Parks Department, getting their input, input of other city staff, and as well the input of the community, and then really developing our program as far as identifying exactly what the needs are, what the spaces will be, how big they need to be, conceptual layouts, things like that. And so we would anticipate, I believe in our proposal we indicated, we'd anticipate right at the get-go an initial community engagement, session to get input from the community, and then once we get kind of at the end of this schematic design stage, to be able to go back to the community, once more with another public input session to kind of review, okay, here's what we're looking at doing, and to get any comment. The sooner we get that input, in the process, the easier it is to steer the ship, because obviously the farther you get down the road to design and try and make changes in the program, the more difficult it becomes. So that's why we hit so hard on, basically get input early and often. So Ultimate goal here being to look at then concluding the design, early fall, putting the project out to bid, late fall, before the end of the year, starting on construction. And then here we indicated, originally he said July 22 as far as completion of construction, and probably be looking a little later than that, like into the fall as we got to looking more, more in detail at the time it'll to actually take to construct the facility. But by all means, as the mayor indicated earlier, definitely by the end of next year, we would see, this project up, open, fully operating for the community. So there's a couple of things, a couple of slides here, just looking at the overall, context. Obviously, you all know where the site is. We feel it's in a really good location, and its presence, the presence in the park, I think, will really present a nice complement to the park, enable the Parks Department to serve this one in particular, and be able to really enhance their, their programming there. A couple of the key elements, obviously, this was a very preliminary site plan that Whittam had put together. I believe it was for a grant application, when they were doing their work a year or two ago. Obviously, a key component is knowing the King Rice basketball courts were just recently redone, as well as the splash pad. Those are two key elements that we will not touch as part of this. And we really want to work to, to complement those. Where we're anticipating the building, is going to go somewhere in the area over here, in the baseball field area. And, how exactly it fits within the site, whether it's tucked into one of the corners and is L-shaped, whether it, is alongside, the existing basketball courts, or, some other configuration. There's, a number of things that we want to consider and take a look at, as well, even considering, are there opportunities for, obviously anytime you build a facility like this, there are, requirements to have parking associated with it. Well, one of the things we could look at is, are there opportunities, for instance, for the city to, utilize parking at St. Mary's, or, or at other sites, at the incubator, across the street. Any opportunity that we can find to reduce the amount of parking that we actually put on the site, increases the available green space, that can be used for, for park amenities, play areas, things like that. And then, as well as when we get into the design of the community center itself, initially in the RFQ that was prepared by the city, the key components that were looked at were, a gymnasium, likely, like a single court gymnasium probably, locker room area, community activity rooms, offices for the Parks Department, a commercial kitchen, which included on our team. I don't specifically mention this in the proposal, but we do have on our team a firm named Corsi Associates, who's basically, they're a kitchen consultant. This is all they do, is design commercial kitchens, and that's all included within our, within our proposal and fees. So they're experts at designing kitchens. So we'll be getting, their input. So they'll be involved in some of these meetings as we meet with, staff and our programming this basically to get everything, set up exactly the way, the way the city would like to have it as well. Incorporate break rooms, restrooms, and this, as we get into the design, into the what we call programming, where we're actually sitting down, having these individual meetings with, with the Parks Department, with the community, getting input and defining exactly, okay, particularly with the Parks Department, as it comes to their office spaces, things like that. What are your specific needs? How much space do you need? What types of equipment are you going to have, in these? What types of furnishings? Things like that, to really spell out exactly, what's needed, and then we can, basically build our design around that. And then again, at each stage of the process, going back to our schedule where we have like a schematic in design development, construction documents phase, there'll be multiple stages there where at each stage of design, we're starting kind of like big picture, and then kind of like scoping in, basically starting with the forest and then narrowing down to the trees. And as I'm sure the mayor and his staff could attest, on the Holly Street parking garage project, it's a very different type of project, but overall the design steps are very similar. It's just a very different type of building. Is that we, throughout the entire process, I and my team were meeting very closely with the administration, and had many meetings, going over things down to the level of picking the color and texture of the flooring in the elevator. So, but even more importantly, looking at what's the facade of the building going to look like? What is the brick color combination you want? And presenting options. Basically coming to the table with, okay, here are some options that we think would be really good, but then sitting down and guiding the city through that process, and ultimately allowing, the decision makers at the city to say, okay, well, here are options A, B, and C. We like option B, the best. And so goal being, throughout this process of, we're not a firm that's going to come in and basically say, here's your design, and here's what you need to build. But we're going to interact closely with the city throughout the process to give you a design that's great and one that you're going to love. Then these next couple of slides were just ones that we threw in kind of for bling factor in the interview. But some of the capabilities that we have that we've been doing on a number of our projects is actually really using like virtual reality technologies. We've got a whole group within our firm that focuses on that to actually, as we build the computer model, as we're designing our documents within software package called Revit, which is basically we're designing the building in 3 dimensions, essentially, within a computer model, and then it actually enables, people to be able to go if they'd like, and sometimes we've used this actually in design sessions, to basically to be able to go in and actually walk through a virtual, generation of the facility, make comments as they're going through it, to assist us in the whole design process. As well, we've helped some other communities with funding. There are opportunities for that. And then really, just kind of we ended our presentation on, and this one was just kind of a summary of, we think as collectively as a team, we bring a great group to this project, to the city, to help the city accomplish the goal of having a very successful community center, and one that you'll be proud of for a very long time to come, which is going to serve the community very well. So with that, Mayor, is there anything you would like me to add, or you can open it up to any questions that you might have?
I think that was very good, Dave. I think in the interest of time, we'll turn it over to President Ressinetti, and she can, guide the question and answer. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. That was very well done. Any questions? I know that you answered a whole lot of them, but any other questions at this point? Councilman Friedman.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you so much, David, for coming and presenting that. It looks great. I did want to echo a question that I had asked prior to the presentation that is still lingering for me. And I worry that the public input time allotment is not enough, because I know in the timeline that was in the presentation, it said that April was sort of when, after which I believe it was 30% or 60% of the design would be done. And that only leaves us, we're already a week into April, and, involving the publicity of the input, the logistics of it. I just, we have, we're on the coattails of another large project that we undertook as a city, and that was a huge criticism, was that we did not allow nearly enough time for the community to voice their input. And I just, I'm worried that we're going to repeat that with the timeline that was given here. So I guess that wasn't really a question. That was voicing a concern.
Sure.
But I'm wondering how, like, if we move forward with this project the way that it has been outlined here, could we, or how would we extend that time frame to make sure that we've really done our due diligence in crowdsourcing all of the community voices whose tax dollars presumably are paying for this potentially $5 million project.
Sure. No, that's an excellent question, and really we are obviously flexible with the and working for the city. So if it's determined that more time is needed, we can certainly do that. Mayor, do you have anything you would like to add?
Councilwoman Friedman, are you suggesting that we should expedite this so we could start quicker and have more time?
No, I, in fact, think that we should, given the enormous scope of this project, I think that, again, like I preface at the very beginning, I was saying that conceptually, I'm 100% on board with this, but I want to make sure this is done in a sustainable way. And I want to make sure that this is done with in the same way that I think that most or all things should be done, which is taking the time to make sure that we are really crowdsourcing these solutions and these ideas. No, I don't believe that this should be expedited, a project of this magnitude, no.
Well, I didn't think that was what you were suggesting. So, Dave, Councilwoman Friedman would like to see, it looks like, more opportunities for public input. So I think that the response would be is that we will incorporate that into the overall timeline. We obviously have it in there as well, but if there's a desire for more opportunities, we should just define that and share that with City Council on how we're going to make sure, because I don't think anybody disagrees with that concept. I mean, the community input and participation is part of the process that already exists, and if there are individuals that want more opportunities, that's certainly not a bad thing. So we can just quantify that and factor that into the process.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on? Councilman Burns, go ahead.
And I'm sorry to take any more time.
It's fine.
David, that was great, and it looks very beautiful.
Thank you.
My question really is for Paul. Paul, are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you foresee it being like, when I was a kid, I went to the boys club, and I actually didn't need it. We used to walk there from Walnut and Maine over there. But do you see it like kids could just go there? I spent more time at the boys club than I did at home. So the parents would just say, okay, go to the club. And you'd stay there and do whatever you wanted. You'd go play basketball, you'd go to the playroom or whatever. Do you see it like that? Or are parents going to be allowed to just leave their kids there and say, see you in a couple hours? Or how do you see it?
No, I don't foresee that at all. We're looking for the ability to run our structured programs, and it's not going to be an open door. I mean, there'll be times when, we'll have maybe, let's say, an open gym or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's more classroom and running programs and our ability to have that central focus for us and to run programs out of that building.
Mm-hmm. Is there going to be like a game room with ping pong and anything like, stuff like that?
Potentially, certainly that's there. I mean, we could possibly do that.
All right.
Councilman Burns, is that something you'd like to see?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
Then we should have a conversation about that, about what that might look like and the options. I don't know that it could be open-ended for every hour that's open, but if there may be some structured time or opportunities. No, I mean, we can have that conversation. I mean, that's what this is all about. I think that's a good comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Burns.
Councilwoman Riley?
Thank you, President Rezzanetti, again, and thank you, David, for this presentation. Again, I'm a bit confused about how, and maybe this question is not for you, it could be for anyone on the team, how are we enveloping, we being the city of Binghamton and your companies, I don't want to say CPL, CP,
Yeah.
enveloping the WITM process? So now, is there remaining contract, then are we, so the funds we've agreed to for them are then enveloped as part of this RL? So anything I don't know, Mayor, he popped on. So
Right.
the contract we have existing with WITM is now being enveloped into, if this passes, into a new contract with this organization.
Councilwoman Riley, the WITM has been paid for the work to date they've done for the Columbus Park improvements. So we do not owe them any more money. We have paid them. That project essentially stopped at the point where the city made an announcement that we were going to pursue a youth and community center at Columbus Park, because WITM was no longer able to continue moving forward because they did not know where that facility was going to be located in the park, therefore could not design a comprehensive plan or improvements, because it's kind of a chicken and an egg sort of thing. So at that point, the WITM project was in essence put on hold until the city of Binghamton got to this point. Now, I will say, originally our thought was we would go through this process like we're going through right now, and whatever firm we selected would work with WITM, and there would be kind of two separate projects running simultaneously. But then through this process, Dave Chase approached WITM and made a presentation where they were both working together, which really put them in a very strong, very unique position. So there is no, right? I mean, both of these are now moving forward together. So they will be designed together, and when it's completed, the Youth and Community Center will be constructed, and all of the improvements to Columbus Park will be complete as well.
Okay, so we fulfilled our terms of this 2-year renewable contract with WITM.
When you say we have paid them for the work they've done to date. WITM is working with CPL. So WITM and CPL are on the same page with regards to this project. So there is no, if we move forward with this, then there is no previous project.
Okay, so then we will, in the terms of the previous contract that we've executed, that also says may be renewed for an additional 2 years using the same rates. So that contract will then be null and void.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me make a comment there, Mayor. I think she's talking about the term contract that we have with WITM for landscape architecture, which is different than the park contract.
Okay, that was not what I understood. Councilwoman Riley, are you talking about the term contract, or are you talking specifically about the Columbus Park improvement project that went to WITM? Because I understand what Ray's saying, but I just want to make sure I understood your question correctly.
Okay, so I may be quoting. So I thought we had an overlapping contract with WITM for the landscape and architecture at the park as well.
No.
Okay.
No.
There is a landscape architectural term contract that lasts for a year with 2 renewables. Any other contract for work at the park that WITM has is a separate contract, and that was for park improvements, and that is not a renewable type contract. That has a limit on the time unless there's an extension. So that contract, like the mayor said, they've been paid up to date for what they've done. And now they'll be included in the contract with CPL to finish that work along with the parks building.
But that will not affect the term contract. the potential
Will
T&M.
not- Yes, it will not affect. the
May
term
need
contract.
work at another park.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Standish.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on?
Madam President?
Yes, Councilman Scaringi.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Could you just confirm for me really quickly the slide that detailed the scheduling and timeline of the process of
Yes.
the proposed plan here? Is that my understanding correct on the bottom? So the general sense being that if everything goes as planned, we'd be breaking ground in December?
Yeah, that's what we're showing here. We're hoping it can be a little sooner than that. Obviously, we're not going to be constructing, we could see, depending on, there could be some initial site work done, site preparation. Obviously, if we're pouring, concrete, things like that, that's all temperature dependent. We've got to work, with that. But yeah, that is the schedule that we are showing currently. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We are now going to move on. Thank you, Mr. Chase.
Thank you. I will sign off now unless there's anything further.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Okay. Lee, are you the host now or co-host? There you are. Okay. All right. So there was a corresponding RL with this, which was RL 2170. So we're just going to move on now to the next one, which is RL 21-64. And we have, again, Paul and Pat.
Okay, so what we would like to do, we have the budget line of equipment repair, and we used a bit of that for the upcoming ice rink at Rec Park. So we would like to take $10,000 that has been in the budget in a capital line for irrigation at MacArthur Park. And at this time, we don't plan on doing that. So we'd like to move that money, and 22,000 out of our trees, which is in the capital, and which would still allow us to do our annual street tree program. The money would then be used to refurbish the much needed work at Webster Street Park, which is one of the heavily used play structures in our system. And it's not a brand new play structure, but literally the skeleton is left and they replace everything else. So it would look brand new to everybody else, and that's what we would like to do.
Any comments or questions regarding this? Okay, moving on to RL 21-64. Paul and Pat?
That one's 2167, right?
Yes, what did I say? Yes, 67. Thank
We're getting
you.
all of our stuff out tonight.
Yes, you are.
2167 is accepting funding from the Broome County Youth Bureau to help pay for the summer fun program. This is something we do every year. We apply to them. They administer a grant from New York State. We apply to them, they give it out. This year we got $10,000, and that money goes towards paying for seasonal, summertime salary staff. So it doesn't go to full-time staff or anything like that. It's the summer jobs this helps pay for.
Okay, any comments, any questions? Let's move on to RL 21-69. That's you still, Paul and Pat,
Yeah.
right?
Actually,
I think Chuck would have to explain this one.
Okay, where's Chuck? Is he here?
I don't know if he's on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Chuck.
Basically, what we're doing is they're using $500,000 of CDBG money for the community center design, and we're short $48,900. We're just taking this money out of fund balance and moving it into a capital project to fund the remaining $48,000 of the design.
Any questions? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a clarifying question because I'm looking at right now RL 21-70 that has the amount, that same $48,900 amount. So just to clarify, that would be that these two RLs go in conjunction, where one of them is authorizing them to take the money out of the fund balance and then put it toward the entire budget of the design phase, the $500,000 plus the $48,900. Am I understanding that correctly?
Councilman Freeman, you are, I think, doing it correctly. We have to do 69 first to move the money into the budget. Okay. And then 70 is to enter into a contract with the money there. So they are together.
Okay. All right. So it's the same money. It's not a duplicate. It's
Correct.
not, it's total 48,000. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so we are going to move on to Steve and Marianne. Are you guys still with us? Thank you for waiting.
thank you.
Thank you, Pat and Paul. There's Marianne. Hi.
I'm here too.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the CDAC allocations.
Okay, I'll summarize real quickly. So CDAC is currently working on fiscal year 47's budget. The draft is available for public review right now. Of main concern is the budget, and that is available on the city website right now. I'll have an actual text version of the action plan hopefully up tomorrow. I had some issues with it. But the budget is available for public review. We'll have a public hearing in April. In the early part of this year, we had RFPs out for both capital projects for both this year, fiscal year 46, and fiscal year 47 at the same time. We had to get 47 out, and we had no applicants in the fall of last year. And the mayor wanted us to go ahead and redo a RFP to see if anyone was willing to do capital projects now. So we kind of brewed them all together as one. And that allowed us to have a great opportunity to ask these agencies when the projects need to actually start and stop, how much they're looking for. They could apply for 2 years at once. And basically the way it worked is CDAC reviewed both, for both years, 46 and 47. They had a set amount for 46, but not for 47. So what Marianne is going to be providing is the official recommendation for 46 capital improvements, which has already been budgeted. 65,000 has already been budgeted in this year's action plan. But you'll see in the Excel spreadsheet that went out that counterbalances what they're planning on recommending in 47. So just to clarify on that. So Marianne? Marianne, you're muted.
I am so sorry. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. The Boys and Girls Club needed a pavilion. Their parking lot is open to the sun. They were asking $20,000 to build that pavilion. They will use it for their programs. And they also think that they can actually maybe rent it out. So it might become income bearing, which was a good idea. The second group that we funded was Greater Opportunities for Broome. They want to do some brickwork and siding on their building, the exterior of their building, and the siding will also give them some energy efficiency. That was $20,000. And then the House of Worship, which is on Riverside Drive, which does a lot with low-income community families in the area, needed a roof. That was $20,000. And the $5,000 that we had left over, we decided to give to family planning. They want to put a new front door in. The project there was $8,650. We only had $5,000, so we're giving them a portion of what they asked for. And that totals the $65,000 for fiscal year 46.
Okay, any comments and questions? Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Steve. Hi, Marianne. Thanks for being here. I know that this is later than you thought your time slot would be, so thank you for your patience. I'm still a little bit confused about why fiscal year 46 and 47 were applied for at the same time. I know, Marianne, you just gave only fiscal year 46. Is that COVID related? Is that why fiscal year 47 was also considered roughly at the same time as well?
It's our understanding that it has to do with the new change in the fiscal year and the way that the block grant will be figured, but I'll let Steve answer that.
We went out for applications in early winter, late fall for 46 capital projects and service programs. Every service program agency applied, but nobody applied for the capital projects. So I went with that to the mayor's office and said, well, no one applied, you could just assign it if you want. And he said, well, no, go out for bid again. So to make it simple, we're already doing multiple levels of requests for proposals. So I thought it would be simplest to simply do one application, and in there it says you can apply for 46 and or 47. It was very well detailed in there. And a lot of agencies did apply for more than 1 year. And that way they only had to apply for the one application. They didn't have to look for another date of application. So I was trying to do it to eliminate confusion and allow agencies who, I guess everyone just didn't understand they needed to apply for capital projects in the fall, allow them a chance to apply in the spring. But that still is for projects that happen this year. While the CDAC is working the CDAC right now is trying to work on 47. And so to save them time as well, we kind of ran them all at the same time.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilwoman Riley?
Thank you, Council President. Hi, Steve. Hi, Marianne. How are you guys doing? Can you tell me the total allocation for fiscal year 46 and 47 from the CDBG funding? How much money are you guys able to support local agencies with based upon the reports received thus far?
It is $65,000 is in the budget for 46. That was established last year. 47 technically has no limit other than the total amount of money that the city will get as CDBG entitlement.
Okay, and that's including from this relief grant. So we're rolling that in? Is that what you're saying?
It is not including any of the relief grant. This is the standard HUD entitlement grant, CDBG, ESG, and home. But CDBG would be the only one that has capital projects in it.
Okay, and so there is no limit, you say. What does that mean to the people watching?
So CDAC normally would say that this time of year for the action plan, simply put an amount in for capital projects. Well, that's not really how you're supposed to do HUD plans. You're supposed to say, we're going to do this project, this project, this project. So they have technically an unlimited amount of money they could put into capital projects, but they also have to do service programs, streets, parks projects, administration, code enforcement, all that other stuff has to be taken into account too for 47. So they need to specify which capital projects they're doing in 47. So in this situation, they're cleaning up the old one. 46 already had $65,000 set for it. and they're funding 47 at the same time. And they have made the determination that they're going to spend, at least as of the draft, $110,000 for capital projects. Now that's just the draft currently. They could change that after the next public hearing.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that helps. So where is the 500,000 coming from?
The $500,000 you're talking about for the Columbus Park, that was established via the draft, the action plan for 46. It's already was approved by City Council last year.
Okay.
The $500,000 for Columbus Park was established then, as was the $65,000 for FY46 service capital projects. Both of those were done in the same action plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, that was approved in June or July of last year. I can't remember.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. No? Okay. Thank you, Steve and Mary Ann. Thank you for your patience. You too.
Take care.
Good evening.
All right, so we're going to move on. We're going to RL 21-68. Chief Zukoski, you're on. Are you here with us?
I am. Good evening, I guess. I have an RL in front of you. First, I'll explain that currently in the police department, we have like several clerical positions that have different titles. You know, we have senior typists, we have a program assistant, we have principal clerks, and we have an administrative assistant. They do similar duties, and we've talked about, you know, organizing this and getting everybody on the same page with the same amount of salary. Their salary's different anywhere for, you know, a couple of thousands here and there. So I'm asking that there's a senior typist position to move that. We want to make all the lower salary positions a program assistant. That way we can cross-train these people and move them throughout the department. We eliminated one position in this year's budget from records already. So we want to make a senior typist a program assistant. We want to make a principal clerk program assistant. A principal clerk, we want to make an administrative assistant. Now that administrative assistant is going to take over one of the principal clerk's positions, which we'd like to make them all program assistants in my office suite. And also there was a senior typist position back in detectives that was in contingency. I know this is all sort of confusing. We're going to eliminate that job that's in contingency back in detectives that does a lot of stuff that's needs to be done every day, and people have been sort of stepping up to the plate in the meantime. That goes to the state of New York. So we want to eliminate that job, put those duties with which was a principal clerk in my office, combine those two duties plus do confidential work for me and make that an administrative assistant. So all the clerical people within the department would fall under either a program assistant or an administrative assistant. That all being said, by eliminating, as I said, we eliminated a records job already in this year's budget. We're going to eliminate that senior typist back in detectives. With making all these changes, what I'm asking for, that's going to be a net savings to the city of $24,356 plus the benefits for that position. I'm asking to expedite this because I'm currently down half my staff in the clerical staff. I had a recent resignation for personal reasons. I had somebody else retire. We had the job that was in contingency, and we eliminated a job. So if I'm asking you to expedite this so we can start hiring people to fill these positions because we're falling behind. Any questions?
Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Chief Zukoski. Again, I know thank you for your patience. I know this meeting has been long so far. I just want to clarify that this piece of legislation does not involve taking any positions out of meaning, or let me rephrase, this legislation only involves eliminating a position that is currently in contingency, not funding a position that is currently in contingency. Is that correct?
Chuck, you better answer this. I'm confused.
I might have asked that in a confusing way.
That's correct, Aviva. This is Sharon. It does not take any position out of contingency. It actually eliminates a position already budgeted for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Chief, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, Ray, you're up next, RL 21-65.
Yep, and I'm going to pass this over to Franco because he's up on what this one is about. So,
Okay.
Assistant City Engineer Franco and City.
Hi, Franco.
Hello, Council. How are you doing tonight? This RL is for the city of Binghamton to accept funds to fix Fairview Avenue or Upper Fairview Avenue, where it meets both the town of Dickinson, the town of Kirkwood, and proceeds back south towards the highway. So there was about 500 feet that was repaired by the federal government through the New York State Department of Transportation. And for us to accept the money, the mayor just needs to submit a resolution to council and council to accept the funds of $48,876.63. And that was all because of the flood back in August of 2018.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Franco.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. And thank you, Ray. So we're going to move up to Chuck. Are you with us still? Yes, there you are. Okay, so you have there's a little cluster of them here. Let's start with 21-60.
21-60 is to increase a 2015 bond ordinance for the reconstruction of State Street. This is the project that we finished up last year outside City Hall. When we were trying to close it up, we had some issues with the contractor, and basically, I believe the project manager, and Ray, you can speak up a little bit because you know a little bit more on this. The project manager either passed away or got sick or left them, and they came back with some change orders that we feel that they're entitled to. Ray, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, the resident engineer who was overseeing the construction for the city had a stroke, and so another person has had to step in and basically go through all his paperwork and verify all the requests that the contractor on the project had. And to his credit, he's worked through this, and we need to have this additional funding in order to close the project out. And a portion of it will be reimbursed from the DOT.
Any questions?
Can I just interject? Since this is additional money on a bond, on Wednesday night, you should be scheduling a public hearing for the meeting on the 21st. And then we can do the bond that night.
Great, thank you, Ken. Anything else? Let's move on to 21-61.
Thanks, Ray.
Yep.
20-21. When
61.
we were doing, 61, excuse me. When we were doing the budget last year, we had a couple capital pieces of equipment that we wanted to purchase, and we were going to purchase them through the bond. At the time we were doing the budget, we were unaware of what the financial impact of COVID was going to be on the city. Normally, we try not to borrow money on a bond to pay for capital assets, such as trucks and vehicles and things of that nature. In the budget process, we trimmed back a lot of requests that was out there. And these are 3 pieces of equipment that we decided to move forward on last July, which is a dump truck and 2 international trucks. And instead of borrowing the money, we would prefer to use fund balance to take care of this $262,000.
Any questions for Chuck? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next one, which is 21-63. No,
This one,
62.
this is something that came about through the New York Conference of Mayors. The gross utility tax is a tax that's paid by utility companies, mainly NYSEG. They were debating, I don't know if you're aware, when you're getting your utilities through NYSEG, whether it's your electric or natural gas, you can pick a different supplier. They were not paying the gross utility tax on the additional suppliers outside of themselves. This firm went out and went after them, and they've agreed to pay municipalities, I won't say everything they may owe us going back from day one, but to a certain period of time. And the city will get an additional $12,478 if we accept this, and we will turn around and pay the company that fought on our behalf $4,991.56, and the remaining amount would go into a contingency. This will all go back into 2020 since all of this is older stuff, older funds.
Any questions? Okay, last one, RL 21-63.
This one is just like the one I was talking to on the DPW, where a backhoe, an excavator, an icebreaker piece of equipment they wanted to buy. We also want to buy this out of their fund balance instead of borrowing it. The advantage of doing this one, if you remember back at the budget time, is the current machine that the water department and sewer department has is going to go to DPW for their use, and the water department's getting a new one.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Have a good night. And so we'll move on to our pending legislation.
Okay. Three items here. RL 52, this is amending the joint sewer budget in relation to the audit. RL 2153, amend the code.
Lee, we're
Yes.
having a little bit, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you do you mind starting over again?
Yes, sorry, can you hear me better now?
I think so. Maybe. Keep going. Let's see.
Okay, sorry. So RL 21-52. And it's the it's amending the 2021 joint sewer budget for the audit. And then RL 21-53, amending the code. This is for our commissions and committees. And RL 21-54, this is the contract with Veolia.
Thank you, Lee. Okay. I don't know who went first. We'll start with Councilwoman Friedman.
So I'll let Councilwoman Riley go first.
Well, thank you.
I didn't see you raising your hand. I apologize. Go
No
ahead.
worries. This is Councilwoman Riley. You see me and you hear me, hopefully. Regarding RL 2154, did we ever receive a copy of this contract?
That might be a question for Ken. I'm not sure.
Is Ken here? There he is.
Yeah.
Ken, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. I think once again, what we usually provide to council are the proposals. I think that's probably what went with the RL. Right, usually we don't do the contracts until after the proposals have been approved. Sometimes we get a draft in advance of that.
Okay, can we see a draft of that contract then?
Yeah, I'll have to look and see whether or not Veolia has actually sent a draft.
Okay, and then
Right, usually we don't do them until the proposals are approved.
And just to clarify, I know we talked about this at length during the business meeting, I believe on the 12th. Veolia is the company that the city has decided to utilize for this audit. But we also mentioned they submitted a bid in the management agreement process that is still open, correct?
Correct.
And that is not a conflict of interest.
It's two different functions.
So
I mean, it went by Ray Standish. Engineering didn't have an issue with it. They consider it two different functions.
So as the city, we can contract an auditor that also has a decision, a vested interest in the outcome of the audit pursuant to another bid.
How do they have a vested interest in the outcome of the audit?
So the outcome of the audit, which again, I'll have to pull what was in the press release, does directly impact what a company interested in obtaining a contract to serve as the management company. Having that information would be of interest to anyone who is interested in obtaining that contract.
You mean the maintenance schedule, what the maintenance schedule will be?
Well, the entire audit. So again, in the contract, it will detail what is expected of the auditor. We don't know yet. We don't have
Well, that's in the proposal.
Okay, so in that proposal, if they find certain things and if they develop a plan, a maintenance plan, because that's what was said in our last meeting as well. If they develop a maintenance plan as a potential bidder, that is of interest to me from my understanding, particularly if I'm pursuing a contract, a management contract for the same entity. Does that?
Okay, yeah, the proposals for the management have already been submitted. They won't be able to change their proposal based on the audit.
But if you have the packet, if you've done an assessment and an audit, you have an inside track, right?
No, but the bids are already in. They've already been submitted. They can't change the bid based on this subsequent work.
We as a city could ask them to rescind their bid if we decide to move forward in another type of arrangement, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by rescind their bid. The city could not approve a professional contract, as true with any contract, but it's not rescinding a bid.
The bid for the management process. So I'm talking about two different things. So if we decide to move forward with Viola, just say we as a council say that just to minimize and or reduce any perceived conflict of interest, we would like you to rescind your bid for the management of the same joint sewage treatment project. Can we do that? Do we have the authority to do that?
You can vote no on the contract.
No.
You can explain your reasoning.
No. My question is, do we as the council have the ability to amend the contract where we then say, if we move forward with this bid, we would like you to rescind your bid for the management proposal?
I guess I'm not following you. You could say, I'm not voting for this because I think that there's an issue. So unless they rescind their bid, I would not approve it.
That's as
Angela. But I don't think you can make your vote contingent upon that. No.
I'm not asking about Angela's vote. I'm asking about amending the terms of this contract.
No, council doesn't vote on the terms of the contract or the proposal. Again, you have a proposal. You can vote for or against the proposal, but you can say, I'm voting against it because of this, or I'm voting for it because of that.
So council does not.
But you don't negotiate the contract.
And we cannot propose language for said contract. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. You can say, I'm not voting for something, or I
No,
am
no.
voting for something because I think this should be included. But
That's
no,
not what
you
I'm
don't
saying,
negotiate
Ken.
the terms of a contract.
Okay, so you're saying council does not have the right to amend a contract and change the language. Okay, I'm not asking about Angela's vote. I was asking about our abilities and our as a council being able to amend a contract.
Correct.
So thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Councilwoman Freeman, do you still have a question or?
Yeah, I think that I do have a question. I also want to make sure that there's not a conflict of interest from the other end, which is, I believe I voiced this concern at the meeting as well, that let's say if we approve this contract with Veolia to do the audit, are they not auditing the equipment that they installed? Wouldn't that also be a conflict of interest as well? You know, that seems like a non-neutral third party, somebody who's auditing themselves. It's like a check your own test type of situation.
They're providing, and I guess we probably should not have let Ray go, because these are really engineering questions more than legal questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a maintenance audit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an audit as to whether or not specific machinery is working or not working.
Right. I mean, I guess I'm confused because I feel like we're sort of using two terms interchangeably that in my mind are distinctly different. There's a maintenance, I've heard this be called a maintenance plan and also an audit, which in my mind are two different things. A maintenance plan would be them explaining how the equipment works to the workers who I have been told have been like Googling things to figure out how it works because they were not provided the full manuals, versus an audit to me seems different. And I'm confused why it's being billed, not literally billed, but I mean, well, I guess literally billed, why it's being called an audit when it's really a maintenance plan. Do you know what I mean? How those two things are confusing to me, and an audit seems like it would be a conflict of interest. I actually just accidentally closed this out, but I think
Okay,
it's
my suggestion would be if anybody has additional questions, they should probably reach out to the city engineer. He's also
Okay.
on the board of directors of the joint sewage.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ken. Councilman Burns?
Yeah. So if this is an audit on the maintenance and not a plan, because it is called an audit now, and they're auditing the equipment that they put in, and from what I understand, some of the equipment still doesn't run 100%. If they determine in this audit, if they come back and they tell city council and the two mayors and the city council down in JC, trustees, that the employees have not been maintaining the new plant correctly. Now, the two mayors say, well, we better hire private enterprise for this to make sure it's done properly because this audit is just unacceptable. Isn't it a conflict of interest that the person who did this audit that's now caused this uproar?
I'm not sure where the dog barking is coming. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm having a really hard time hearing you, Councilman Burns.
It's my dog, but anyway, so isn't it a conflict of interest that this company that has now caused this outroar by saying that they have not maintained properly, that they are the ones who are going to benefit by getting the contract to be the private enterprise to do the maintenance?
Okay, well, once again, my suggestion is tomorrow before Wednesday, talk to the city.
That's illegal. That's a conflict of interest question. That isn't anything.
It's not, but you're asking about the scope of the work that they're doing, exactly what equipment that they're reviewing, what Veolia may have to do with the actual installation. Those are all things that are engineering issues. You're making presumptions that I can't tell you are correct or incorrect. You need to go over those with the city engineer, and also as a member of the board.
Okay. So we'll talk.
They know what manuals they have. They know what has been provided. They know what's being reviewed. They know what equipment's there. I can't answer those questions.
Okay. So I'll get those answers, and then Wednesday we'll come back to this, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be on the agenda for Wednesday.
Right.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Right, the one thing I should point out, I know that at the public hearing, a number of people made comments about, Veolia being involved in a $600 million settlement in Flint, Michigan. Just so people are aware, that's not accurate. Right? They were not involved in that process at all. There is pending litigation that it is being disputed, but they were not involved in that portion of the litigation at all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That has nothing to do with this audit, but okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right, then I will take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Adjourned. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Right.
Night.
Good night.